Hi, this is Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation Podcast. This podcast isn't some magic trick about how to work less. Instead, it's about how to really enjoy the work that you do and to enjoy your vacation time. Hi, I'm Sean D'Souza, and you're listening to the 3-Month Vacation. Our business at Psychotactics got started because of a failed joint venture. Back in 2002, nobody knew us. The internet was still very new. It wasn't easy to sell online. But I'd bought several books from a few sources, and one of these sources was a guy called Joe Vitale. Joe and I exchanged emails, and then out of the blue, he suggested that he could promote our product. And this is the earliest version of the Brain Audit. He wrote, "I can sell this to my list." And I was of the moon. We had hardly any list, and no list where people were buying products. And here was someone who was not only promoting it to his list, but his list was ready to buy a product because they had bought product in the past. As you're listening to this story, you might be thinking, wow, that's such a great start. It wasn't a great start. Things didn't go well. They didn't go anywhere, in fact. So we didn't have a launch for the Brain Audit. We just put it up on the website. Someone came along, they found it, they bought it, and then we saw it in our email. And Renuka did a merry dance, and that's what she did for many of those sales, those early sales. Your situation might be completely different because you're used to all the stuff that's going on the internet now, which is you have to launch, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then you get all these sales and you get all these customers. And we didn't have that. So you could consider us lucky. And this episode is about the launch. Maybe you were lucky. Maybe you got that launch out. Maybe you had customers. Maybe you had some sales. But then what happens after that? The Brain Audit is a good example because despite the fact that we didn't have a launch, we have continued to sell that all the way from 2002 to the present date. And here's where it goes slightly wonky. And the reason why it goes this way is because people think, well, that's a digital product. I have a workshop or I have a service. Remember that at Psychotactics, we have continued to sell products online, digital products, courses, workshops on an ongoing basis. So we've done the training, we've done workshops, we've done every kind of thing that you could sell online or offline. No, we don't have a bakery, we don't have a restaurant, but that's about it. So take these lessons because we're going to cover 3 parts today. The first is you've launched the product, now what? The second is how to use repetition as a sales strategy. And the third is how not to be a pest, how to embed that information within the editorial. Let's start out with the first one, which is you've launched the product, now what? The moment after the launch can often be a thud. Nothing happens, simply because nothing is supposed to happen. All the clients who intended to buy your product at launch stage, they bought your product, they bought your service. Those who hesitated stay in the wings, and what you're faced with is an unreasonable amount of nothingness. This is true for any product like software or a new kind of shampoo, or for that matter, a workshop announcement. It starts out with this spike at the launch stage, and then there's nothing. We were faced with this nothingness factor when we first sold the Brain Audit. As I told you, our launch was a bit different. We just put up the sales page, one person came along, they bought the book, took us by surprise. And so we'd sell a book here and we'd sell a book there. But I'd also speak at events, and we'd sell 20 or 30 books speaking at local events in Auckland. Nonetheless, this was very slow, and this pace of sales couldn't give us the lifestyle that we wanted. There are 2 big reasons why an increase in activity in sales is essential. The first, and I think the most important, is that if a client doesn't read your information, they will often go elsewhere. To me, getting that client to understand that information was far more important than just seeing another sale. So what I mean by this is that when a client reads your information, they're taken by the information, they find some change, and they stay with you. So when they don't read that information, when they don't buy it, then they go elsewhere. This means that you've lost the chance to build a community. And the community is very critical because you can sell more products and more services over time to that community. So it's not just one product that we're talking about, but an ongoing product. But we start off with that one product. And that starts to build one member of your community, and the second and third and the fourth. The second reason, of course, is a sale, which brings in revenue. These two combined form the ecosystem for how you're going to sell things on an ongoing basis. It's just a drip format, one by one. And nothing that I've seen in all these years is more important than a newsletter. So the email newsletter is the way that you're going to keep in touch with clients. You can get them through any method, through Instagram, through Facebook, through any method, but eventually the sales are going to be through that newsletter. Back then, we didn't have any social media or YouTube or anything of that sort, so we just sent out a newsletter. We sent it out twice a month, then we made it a weekly, and then a bi-weekly, which is Tuesday and Saturday. But to go back to the very start, all we'd do is send out the newsletter and then we'd add a little blurb, which is an interesting blurb at the end of the article. It would say something like, "Aren't clients strange? They nod at all the right times, they agree with what you're selling, and suddenly they don't buy. Or worse, they buy from someone else. What causes such behavior? Find out what's going on in the brain of the client with the brain audit." And there'd be a link. That little blurb would cause the drip purchase. A few people would buy the product with every email. Some of them would wait for several days to buy the product. Some of them would buy a couple of weeks later, but that was the drip. As we increased the frequency of the emails, the sales of the product went up as well. Then we'd announce a bonus sale several times a year. We'd package the brain audit along with a few other goodies, and we'd offer it to our list. What's the point here? The point is that the bonuses always did the trick. Readers of the newsletter would probably ignore the sales blurb week, after month, after several months, and then there would be this pitch with the bonuses, and then it would just spike. The sales would go up. But we didn't want to be in the client's face all the time with all of these launches, which is why we'd send out an offer twice or thrice a year. If we went really nuts, it would be 4 times a year. And just for good measure, we'd pick days that were supposedly bad days. For instance, one of our emails would go out on Christmas Day. No one is supposed to be checking the email on Christmas Day, but our sales would be extremely high. A few launches like this for the brain audit, and we were well on our way to creating the leverage that we were looking to achieve. The key is not to get too predictable. If you know there's going to be a sale or some goodies, would you buy something earlier and forfeit the goodies? Which is why we kept the announcements of such sales very unpredictable. It ensured that clients bought through the year in small batches, and then you'd see the spurt in sales. However, there's also a bit of a downside to this. If you don't put the dates in your calendar, you will see the months fly by without the bonus sales happening. We often used to wake up to find half the year gone, and we had forgotten to announce a bonus sale. We now have the entire year planned to make sure this kind of periodic amnesia doesn't recur. There's a little note about bonuses too. When we began, we only knew what we saw around us, and everyone would pile up a ton of bonuses. It was monkey see and monkey do, and so we did the same. After you launch your product or service, there's going to be this quiet. It's just normal. But if you keep at it with these little blurbs in your newsletter, in social media, wherever you are at this point in time, you'll find that little sales happen all along. And when you've got many products like we do, then all those little sales add up to a lot of money. And this is really the first lesson. This is the first part of today, which is the drip is going to just bring in that steady revenue or little bits of revenue, which then will grow in time as your audience grows, as your presence grows, as your reputation grows. And you possibly know that. You know that you put stuff in your newsletter, you send it out on a regular basis, you post on social media on a regular basis. You know that you're going to get this little drip feed. But that's just one way. The second way is to use repetition. How are you going to use repetition so that clients don't get sick of you and your blurbs all through your newsletters, in your social media? Here's how you do it. You do it through editorial. Many years ago, when I first started in advertising, I read a book by David Ogilvy. Ogilvy was a master at promotion, but he came about it the hard way. He had to sell products door to door, and he had to work out what caused customers to buy. One of the things that he seemed to underline to aspiring copywriters was an idea of consistency. And my memory is a bit hazy because I read those books back in 1990, but it went something like this. You need to follow up about 9 times. And it's not because the client is not paying attention, it's just that he or she is lost in their own problems. Which is why repetition is a must in your newsletter, but it's easy to go off track with other media. When you're sending out a newsletter and you do it on a frequent basis, you're going to think about including your product. You could either add the links to the product as part of the editorial, or below the editorial right at the end, or do a sales pitch like we talked about, and we could do this several times a year. However, when it comes to other media, that factor of reputation might not be as consistent. Take the podcast, for example. When we started the 3-month vacation podcast, I'd mentioned products and courses and workshops right at the end of every podcast. And you know the section, it's called What's Happening in Psychotactics Land. However, the choice of product or service being offered would not be consistent. Then, at one point, we decided to create a format of sorts. Every podcast would talk about 5000 BC, no matter what else was trying to hog that spotlight. Let's take the Houston workshop that we're conducting in the last week of October. That would need to get in the podcast, but even so, 5000 BC would be mentioned on an ongoing basis. In short, you want to get the same message over and over and over and over again. But do you say the same thing? Essentially, yes. I always say 5000 BC is filled with introverts and that I'm the extrovert. However, the tone or the message may change from time to time. At times, there may be an example from 5000 BC or a story that's related to 5000 BC, but the core message is one of introverts and 5000 BC, and that stays doggedly on target. You too need to change the message a bit, but you keep your story consistent. All of that consistency comes from one word. When you examine your product or service, it will always seem to represent more than one word. If you take the brain audit, it could be about hesitation, it could be about speedier conversion. If you have a service like a yoga class, you might have mindfulness, flexibility, injury-free. You could end up with 3 or 4, even a dozen ways to explain your business. And the big mistake that most people make is they use 2 or 3 words and they don't get across that single message. A single message sent out repeatedly is what sticks in the brain of the client. That's what David Ogilvy said. And that's what you need to put in your podcast, in your video. Repetition is what is going to remain in your client's head. And I say video or podcast, but the application doesn't matter. You might be using webinars. You might be speaking to live audiences. You might be going through social media. That consistency, that's what's going to bring you repeated sales. The consistency of one word or one idea is the only thing that's going to cut through the clutter. When you drum home that one message, you will get that point across. Then you take the same message into videos, podcasts, speaking, webinars, any medium that you're going to employ in the future. And this is the thing. Repetition. Just go at it over and over and over again through all the media that you have. That one idea is the most crucial. What is 5000 BC about? It's about introverts. What is the brain audit about? It's about overcoming hesitation. What is your yoga class about? It's about injury free. You go at that one word over and over again. And then when the client is in a position where they need to get injury free yoga, when they have injury, that's when they remember you. And so this ongoing sale is going to happen when you drive home a point that sticks in the client's head, and then when they need that product or that service, they're going to remember what you said and then come to you. And that brings us to the end of the second part of this podcast. In the first part, we looked at how you're using the newsletter, especially the newsletter, to get this blurb kind of stuff, this information on a consistent basis, and you get this drip in sales. The second part, we looked at repetition, how that drip needs to be consistent with that one word over and over and over again. And that takes us to the third part, which is pretty critical, because what you're doing is you're creating this repetition with this one word, but you're embedding the information within the editorial so you're not a pest. How do you do that? Russian dolls. You're likely to have seen the Matryoshka Russian dolls, haven't you? They're also known as nesting dolls, and it's a set of wooden dolls inside each other. So you open one doll to find another smaller doll within, and then the smaller doll reveals yet another smaller doll, and so on. And when you're selling products or services, it's actually similar because you can embed your information, your sales information within editorial. So people are reading what seems like an article, but in fact, you're selling them something. And unlike the Matryoshka dolls, there is a big difference. The Matryoshka dolls keep getting smaller, but your information, your products and services, they can get more of a spotlight. How do we do that? Let's find out. Even as you're listening to this podcast, you'll notice that there was an entire discussion about 5000 BC, which is our membership site. You got told how 5000 BC was for introverts. You got other bits of information about 5000 BC. We talked about the brain audit, which is also a product being sold on the Psychotactics site. In effect, you were introduced to two products, and if you paid close attention, the sales page and the landing page workshop, which was the Houston workshop, that was also brought up. You may have also noticed something else. You didn't resent the information at all. If you're already a member of 5000 BC, you're happy that your decision to be a member has been reinforced. If you're not a member, well, now you have that information. If you've already read the brain audit, then you don't resent the information. In short, this entire second section was like a sales pitch, like a Matryoshka doll, but you didn't resent it. It was non-confrontational because it was giving you information that was useful to you. So let's take another example. Imagine you're a photographer and you're conducting a workshop. Now, let's say as that photographer, you become a stockist for some lenses. And during the workshop, you can talk about those lenses and you can talk about the prices. You can show how those lenses work. And something very sublime is happening here. You're playing with those lenses. You're looking at the lenses. You know the price. You use them on your camera. And not everyone is captivated, but enough people will go, yep, I would like these lenses. In effect, what that photographer has done, she has embedded that information. She's got prospects that have moved over to being a client. Think of that yoga class that we mentioned earlier. What could you do in that yoga class? Let's say you're planning to have a 2-day session on breathing techniques somewhere in the future. In that class, you could mention it. You could show some of the breathing techniques. And the moment you do that, what you're doing is embedding sales information, because you can bring up the fact that you're having that workshop in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. And what you're doing is you're embedding that information. And then clients want to line up to buy the product. And the beauty of embedding information is that you get lots of space. If you sent out a newsletter and you put in a paragraph that had some kind of pitch, that would be okay. But imagine putting in 6 paragraphs of that information. Clients would just not like it. They would unsubscribe right away. But if you put in 6 paragraphs of information, imagine you were that photographer, you were sending out that newsletter, and you put in 6 paragraphs of the lenses, how to use them, how to get the best light coming through them, whatever it is you're selling. The point is that you are educating that client, and in doing so, you're embedding information. In doing so, you're able to sell the product, because now you're creating that need and that want for that product or that service. And you can use all the media at your disposal. You can use video, podcasts, webinars, anything that you want to embed that information. Even a casual social media post can show a bunch of camera lenses or photo equipment or some breathing technique video. You can mention a workshop that you're having in some country. Whatever the eventual goal, you don't have to be just trying to sell. You can use plain old editorial. And you can use that to keep selling products through the year. You may not sell in huge volumes when you're mentioning the products or services. You won't see this huge spike. However, this doesn't mean that your clients are not paying attention. These embedded pieces of information are getting through. So when you do that one pitch, that big sales pitch, that bonus pitch, that's when all of this hard work will pay off. There's really no downside to embedding like a Matryoshka doll. It gives you so much space to explain your products and your services and how they are used and how they are useful to the client. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. And of course, it's time for the summary and the one thing. So what did we cover today? The first thing we covered was this drip system. You've launched your product and now you're thinking nothing's going to happen. But if you consistently send out the newsletters, just like we've done over the years, then what you're going to get is this continuous drip, people buying on a consistent basis. As you increase the number of your products, then the drip becomes a much bigger drip, of course, because your clients are buying different products and now your revenue is increasing. That drip is very crucial because it sets you up for what is a big bonus sale. You do that 3 or 4 times a year and you'll see this huge spike in your sales. And once you have several products or services, you can still use that system. We have close to 21 or 22 different products, and we do this for all our courses, we do this for all our products, and we have this constant drip and then this big spike. So that was the first part, which is the drip and the spike. The second thing that we learned was using repetition as a sales strategy. You've heard me talk about 5000 BC and introverts. You've heard me talk about brain audit and why clients hesitate at the last minute. It's repetition. It's one idea being drummed over and over again because the client isn't listening to you most of the time. And when they have the problem, they have to remember what you said. So if you send out 3 or 4 different messages, it's total confusion. You take one idea from that product, whatever that product is, and then you drum home that idea over and over and over again until it becomes second nature for the client. And that's when they decide to buy. The third thing that we learned was that you don't have to just restrict yourself to the blurb or to a sales page. You can embed the information within the editorial. I go to seminars and I speak at events and I'll do workshops or training or write articles. And I will spend enormous amounts of time talking about something like 5000 BC. But what am I talking about? I'm talking about how we increase the pricing of 5000 BC. And then I'll show them this was the price, here's what happened. This is the price, here's what happened. Here's the price, here's what happened. And in doing so, I'm exposing them to 5000 BC, just like you are being exposed to the term 5000 BC right now. So you can embed a lot of that information within your editorial, and clients don't resent it. Definitely not as much as they resent one more sales pitch. Now, this method doesn't get any instant results, but what it does is it sets up the client. So we may not sell a product for a while or sell small amounts of the product for a while. And then when we do a pitch, when we announce some kind of launch, boom, it's up and running again. So a single launch like the article writing course would then generate $80,000 for that one launch, when the rest of the time it has done very little. But that's what you're doing with the drip and with the embedded information. You're setting it up for that launch. That's what you're doing with the repetition, and that's what we've done today. So what's the one thing that you can do today? What you can do is look at your product and say, what is the one idea that this product gives out? With the brain audit, it's hesitation. With 5000 BC, it's introverts. Can you say that over and over again? So get to that point where you're going, what does this stand for? It stands for 16 things. Let me say one thing repeatedly. That's how you get a point across. That's how you set it up. And that brings us to the end of this podcast. Let's find out what's happening in Psychotactics land. One of the things that is extremely difficult to do in any business is to write a sales page. And the reason for this is because it's not normal for us to write a sales page. Nobody creates products on a regular basis. Nobody creates workshops and trainings. And so maybe you'd create 1 or 2 a year or 3 a year if you're really prolific, which means that you've got 3 chances to write a sales page in a year. And therefore, that skill is very rarely developed. And so when you have to write that sales page, it becomes a very painful activity. And even copywriters, they spend a week, maybe more than a week, putting a sales page together. How can we do this in 3 days? That's the system that we've developed for your sales pages, for your landing pages. We show you how you can sell your products or services online, because that's what you want to do. That's how you get into this vacation mode. That's how you have more free time. And that's what we're going to do at the Houston workshop. That's on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. We haven't got a venue yet. If you know of a venue in Houston, please email us. And already the seats are starting to fill up. At the point of recording this podcast, there are only 11 seats left. So if you're keen to learn about sales pages, landing pages, and do it like in 3 days guaranteed, this is the workshop to attend. Email me at sean@psychotactics.com and we'll send you the details. What else is happening? I've been playing with Instagram, and if you go to Sean D'Souza, that's SeanDsouza or ZA, then you will find all the cartoons that I've been posting. That's one Instagram account. The other one is more interesting. It's called 6 Spices and a Pressure Cooker. Now, obviously you have to type 6_spices. But once you do that, once you get past the first underscore, you will see the name pop up, the Instagram account pop up, and you can follow 6 Spices and a Pressure Cooker. It's about how I cook stuff, which is very quick, very nutritious, and you can learn more about that at 6 Spices and a Pressure Cooker or Sean D'Souza. That's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. And as always, join us in 5000 BC. You know why? It's a very safe place. It's for introverts, and you get your questions answered. That's me, Sean D'Souza, saying bye for now. Bye-bye. Still listening? One of the funniest launches that we ever had was the article writing course. The article writing course generates almost 100,000 every time we release one edition of it. So it's probably made over $1 million now, but we almost didn't launch it. And the only reason we launched it was because we thought, okay, we'll just get it out there. We'll put the sales page. So that was one of my skills. I could write the sales page. So we put the sales page out there, and we thought by next year, people will have heard about this and they will sign up next year. So that was the following year. And imagine our surprise when people signed up. In fact, that sold out so quickly. It has been one of our most popular courses ever. It was a mistake. It was something that we just didn't expect. In fact, my thought was, why would I have an article writing course? Why would I even bother with an article writing course? Who would want an article writing course of all courses? They would want something about strategy and stuff like that. But there you go. And I think there are two lessons there. The first one is that we were prepared to put out that sales page and put out a course, and we didn't care that nobody signed up. In fact, we were pretty sure that nobody would sign up. So that kind of having the guts to just put it out there and not bother about what happens, that's a cool thing. And the second thing is just about expertise. Everybody considers themselves to be an expert. Not everybody, but the experts definitely consider themselves to be experts. And they make sure that you know about it. And no one is an expert. We didn't know that, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff that we do, we don't know precisely how it's going to turn out. We do the best that we can, and that's all that anyone can hope for. So that's me, Sean. This is the saying bye for now. Bye-bye.